Hey everybody, post-editing Jax here. So before we get into the video, I've got a ton of cool live feeding stuff for you guys today. I've got some frozen thawed feeding, and I'm going to talk all through the tips and tricks. Just wanted to say, if you guys are enjoying the content, please go ahead, subscribe, like the video, and interact with me in the comments. Been really enjoying interacting with you guys. I'm actually on my way to the Reptile Expo right now, so got some cool videos planned in the future, and without further ado, enjoy the video. Hey everybody, welcome back to Isomorphs. Today we're going to be doing a video that I've been very excited to make, but haven't quite had the time to do so. I've actually had a couple feedings pass since I've been able to film this video because things didn't align quite right for me to get all my camera equipment set up, and tonight is finally going to be the night. So I've already done all of the live feedings earlier today, and so I'll be throwing in the clips and doing some voiceovers over that, kind of explaining my process. Really the main thing to think about when you're doing live feeding, because I am going to give some tips and tricks about how I do my frozen thawed feeding, but for my live feeding, really the only thing that matters is the time of day that you feed them. Snakes are nocturnal, they like to eat at night. A lot of people who have picky snakes try to feed on their schedule, and you have to feed on a snake schedule, not your own personal schedule. So I spend a lot of nights in here doing all my feeding, and it does take some time, but it's what gets the best feeding response out of my snakes. So timing is really important, and on top of that, it's very important to make sure that you have the proper prey size with any animal that you're feeding. Always undersize the prey that you're feeding, and I'll show some examples of that with the different snakes that I'm feeding tonight. So without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and cut to some of my live feedings, and I'll talk over those and talk through my process. And then after that, we will talk a little bit more about what goes into my process for doing frozen thawed feeding. Alright everybody, so here I'm going to be feeding some of my ball pythons and a couple of my other species of snakes. So I just got all of these snakes, and they were all being fed live when I received them, and because I'm doing some pairings, I didn't really want to disrupt their feeding cycle, so I will be able to switch them over to frozen thawed rats as soon as possible. For me, when it comes to live feeding, it is a little bit more convenient, I will admit that, but you're removing the risk of a snake being damaged, scratched, bitten, whatever it may be, by the prey item, and the bigger the prey item you're feeding, the more of a risk that becomes. A jumbo rat is far more likely to harm a snake than a small rat, and so that's another reason that I feed undersized prey, and I don't think that it matters too much, especially if you have them on a pretty frequent feeding schedule. I don't like to oversize my prey, just because even if my snake can eat it, I think that it's better for them to grow slowly, because age is also a factor in breeding, not just weight. And I find that if I'm feeding small rats weekly or medium rats every 2 weeks to most of my adult ball pythons, I don't have any issues with my ball pythons getting up to size over time. And here I'm feeding my emerald tree boa. As you can see, that's him taking down the fuzzy rat. And I'm sure you've noticed that I haven't been showing the strikes for any of my snakes, because a lot of them are camera shy and they won't eat if I put a camera in their face. And here is my Pac-Man frog. I'm giving him some live crickets, and that's just all of the live feedings that I did for today. Alright everybody, now let's talk exactly what the process looks like for a frozen thawed feeding. So my process starts 24 hours before. This is my deep freezer that I have in my garage, and I'll pick out all of the different rats and mice at the different sizes I need, and I'll put them in a bag like this, and I will thaw them for at least 24 hours overnight before I do anything else. And now I'm going to show you guys how I feed all of my frozen thawed rodents. So this process actually starts 24 hours before I do any sort of feeding. And the reason for this is because I want to make sure that my rats are thawed out at least 24 hours before I feed them. And the reason why is because it is super important to make sure that you follow the same food safety protocols that you would follow as a human when thawing out food for yourself. When you quick thaw a rodent, for example, frozen into straight warm water, or thawing even worse at room temperature, this gives bacteria an excellent breeding ground, which can either kill or harm your snake. So I like to prepare all my rodents the night before, and what I'll do is I get all of the rodents the appropriate prey sizes and the appropriate number of rodents that I'll be feeding. I throw them into a Ziploc bag, throw them in scalding water, and let them soak for 10 to 15 minutes through this Ziploc bag. And now I'm going to feed the snake, and what I'll do before I feed all of my snakes is I actually blast the rodent with a hair dryer, and the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm giving the snake a nice hot spot to lock onto. And so after I've blasted the rodent, I will clock it with the heat gun, and I'm looking for about 115 to 120 degrees. You can do a little bit less than this, but the reason I do that is by the time I bring it to the snake, it loses a lot of heat, and those heat guns are typically reading external temperature, not internal temperature. You don't want to cook the rodent, but you do want to give a nice heat spot for them to lock onto. And as you can see, my green tree python is a great feeder. He hits rats every single week, every single time. Now I'm feeding my carpet python, and the thing about my arboreal or semi-arboreal species of snakes is that they almost never, ever skip a meal. You'll find oftentimes with species of snakes like this, green tree pythons, tree boas, and then any other related species of snake, they always hit food. They are just great eaters. And this is another example of a great eater. Such a great eater that she actually missed, and I find that happens a lot with retics too, is they will be so excited that they will strike at anything, which is like why I like to be very, very careful feeding them. And go ahead and ignore some of the poops in the tubs and some of the messed up water dishes. What I'll do after I see that all my snakes have eaten is I'll go back in and then I'll clean out their tubs real quick, just by removing the poop, and I will also add all of the water to their tubs. But anybody who keeps a lot of snakes knows that snakes love to soak, they love to knock their water dishes over, and so it's a constant battle. So I mean, I'm refilling waters all the time, taking poops out, doing all that maintenance as much as I can. And this right here, this is my Brazilian rainbow boa, and he's a great feeder. I wish I could show him under flash. He is one of my prettiest snakes in my collection. I can't wait until he's an adult. And as you can see here, that's my big boy retic. That's my pied retic, Pos Golden Child. Not sure if he has Golden Child in him, but he loves to watch me prepare the meals because he gets fed last, and he knows that because he takes my biggest rat out of all my snakes. This right here, I'm not exactly sure. I think this is a pastel het desert ghost, het clown, het cryptic. Ball python, yeah, that's what she is. So she works into a couple of my different projects, and I actually got her pretty cheap when I was buying a bunch of my other snakes. So she is a great addition to the collection, and she's super cool, and I actually end up feeding her 2 rats there, or 2 mice. And this right here, this is my banana clown het sunset female as well, and this was my first time offering her a frozen thawed meal, and she actually took it, so I was super excited to do that. And some of my other snakes, I did offer them frozen thawed meals. They didn't take it, so we'll try again. It can take a lot of effort to get a snake switched over from live to frozen thawed, which is why it's great to do it at the age of these snakes, because these snakes, they're only a few months old, so it's easy to get them swapped over. And right here you can see a time lapse of my green tree python eating, and he is always really fun to watch. And then this right here, this is my retic, and the reason I've got a handling glove on for these is because you do not want to take a bite from these. If they miss and they wrap your hand, it hurts pretty bad. It's happened to me before. It's happened to a lot of retic keepers. You always want to be as careful as possible in the snake hobby, even sometimes when it seems trivial. I always like to use safety equipment. Even opening up his enclosure with a hook works well for me. And this is my blood python, and I wanted to show an example of another way that I do my feedings. And sometimes I have snakes that won't strike, but they will eat immediately after I close it up. And last but not least, we got another feeding for that young ball python girl that I've got, and so she's taken 2 mice here because I didn't actually have rats that were a good size for her, so I just gave her 2 mice this week. But if you enjoyed the video, please go ahead and subscribe and leave me a like. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.